I can't tell you how excited I am that it's Holy Week. I don't know if you feel that way or if you get that way or not, but I am so pumped about Easter Sunday next Sunday. And I hope that you are inviting your friends. You're going to get them here on Easter Sunday. We're going to give them the story of Jesus and the tomb being empty, and I just can't wait. So I hope you're excited about it. I'm excited about today too. Palm Sunday. I'm going to talk about that. But I want to start with a Bible trivia question, see how good you are in your Bible knowledge. Here's the question. How many times does the Bible record that Jesus wept? How many times do you think it is? Here are your options: 1 time, 2 times, 3, or 4. So on count of 3, give me your best guess at what you think it is. 1, 2, 3, what do you think it is? All right, how many of you said 2? Raise your hand. Well, you can say nanny, nanny, boo-boo to everybody else because you were right. No, don't say nanny, nanny, boo-boo. You're right. 2 times in the Bible it records that Jesus wept. One was with somebody dying. Do you remember who it was? Somebody tell me. When Lazarus died, Jesus wept. He was deeply moved because of his friend's death and the sorrow that they were feeling, and there were other reasons too. But there's another time. We'll read about that today in the story. Well, listen, you know, I went to the Holy Land, and when I was preparing to go, I really didn't know what to expect. I had all these images in my mind of what it might be like, but I really wasn't ready for what I experienced. Does that make sense to you? Now, let me say this up front. I'm not any better than anybody else because I've been in the Holy Land. Please don't think that at all. If anything, it's probably more humbling than I would have imagined. But while I was there, one of the places that we visited was called the Mount of Olives. And we were with our guide for, 6 days or so, and it was on day 4 at the end of the day, and the guide was asking us, he said, so what has been your favorite so far? Maybe in day 5, I can't remember. He said, what was your favorite so far? And he's asking, these are a bunch of preachers, most of them have been a ton of times except for me and a couple of others. And they ask, and so people would say, oh, I loved it when we went here or we went there. A couple of them, maybe 3 of them, said, we haven't gotten to my favorite place yet. And so that was in the old city of Jerusalem and around there. And then they turned to me and said, hey, so what about you? First time here, what's been your favorite? And I said, well, 2 so far have been my favorite. One is Caesarea Philippi, which is up in the northern part above the Sea of Galilee. I'll share about that later at some point and why that was significant. But the other for me was on that Sunday morning when we finally drove up very early in the morning, a cold morning, to the Mount of Olives. And as we're standing there, emotions began to just flood over me of Jesus' experience on this mount and all that took place here. And so I've got some pictures here I want to show you. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe you can make sense out of this. I had this in my mind because I'd seen this picture hundreds of times of the old city looking from the Mount of Olives over to the holy city going, the Kidron Valley is between the Mount of Olives and the old city of Jerusalem. There's a closer up view. You can see a little bit better here. You can pick out the Dome of the Rock in the middle. You see the gold, looks like the capital of Atlanta, in Atlanta. That's the site that they say would have been where the temple was. And so now it's Muslim and, Christians aren't allowed in there. But there's some other pictures here you'll see. We can get a little bit closer there. You can kind of get a sense of the Kidron Valley. It really drops way down and then comes back up to these walls that you've probably seen before. It did something to me when I was standing there thinking about what Jesus experienced on this Mount of Olives on that first Sunday. I was thinking about all that he experienced on that day, because he actually walked that day, we understand, from Jericho, which is going to be it's going to be east and a little bit south of Jerusalem. And when you go from Jerusalem down to Jericho, you're moving from a lush green area to the wilderness type arid land, all the way down to the Jordan River. And so Jesus would have walked this path, and it's a 16-mile walk from Jericho up to Jerusalem. It rises about 3,000 feet over that distance, and it passes through this arid country. So the travelers that were with him, they would have been carrying a lot of water, and because there were a lot of robbers in this area, as we know from the stories in the gospel, they would have had a short knife of some sort, a short sword that they would have used for protection. Jesus wouldn't have been walking alone. Obviously, on this morning, this Palm Sunday day, he would have had his disciples with him. He would have had, most likely, his mother and his brothers and their families. There would have been a large crowd following as well, because people are on their way to Jerusalem for the Passover. This is important. This is a significant gathering of the Jews in Jerusalem for this Passover festival, where they remember God delivered them from Egypt and from Pharaoh. So it would have been a big group, hundreds of pilgrims from Galilee and the Jordan Valley, because what's happening now is Jesus' following is growing immensely, especially since he had raised Lazarus from the dead. And so his notoriety is increasing, which scares the Jewish leaders. They're afraid, because he's growing in notoriety and popularity. They're going to lose control. They're going to lose their authority. They're going to lose their power. And so they've already made up their minds at this point what they're going to do to Jesus. And we know they didn't just want him silenced. They wanted him dead. They'd already made their plans. They were going to put him to death. So everyone was waiting to see whether Jesus would show up in Jerusalem or not at this time. Whether there was going to be a showdown. And if there's going to be a showdown, who's going to win? Is it going to be the Jewish leaders, the Romans, or Jesus? What's going to happen to his disciples? So people begin to hear that Jesus is on the way. And you can imagine the excitement. He's coming. He's coming. He's really coming. He's coming. The Messiah, Jesus is coming. Our King is coming. And that sets up the framework for what happens on Palm Sunday. Excitement hung electric in the air. It's almost Passover. You can just kind of feel the excitement. Well, there's no doubt what the Jews were doing. I mean, as Jesus came and he rides in on this donkey, there's no question that they are giving the image of a king, their king, entering Jerusalem on this special day. I love how this passage that I want us to read part of from Luke 19 begins. Luke 19:28 kind of starts Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And here's what it says. It says that after telling this story, Jesus went on toward Jerusalem, walking ahead of his disciples. And that stood out for me a number of times. I've seen this here and other places. It says that Jesus is walking ahead of his disciples. He's not hiding in the middle of the crowd, hoping he doesn't get caught, because he knows, and the people know, that the Jewish leaders are after him. He's not in the back with everybody else in front of him, kind of protecting him. That's not. Jesus is out front, leading the way into Jerusalem. And Dane read for us, shared with us the story of Jesus telling the two disciples to go find the colt and get the colt and bring him up here. And I was thinking, what were those two disciples, what were they thinking when Jesus said, all right, go into this town and get this donkey who's never been ridden on before, and if somebody comes up to you, just say the Lord needs him. They probably were thinking, Jesus, you've lost your mind. What are the chances are that, number one, we're going to find a donkey that's never been ridden, and what are the chances are that if we untie it, they're going to let us do it? Well, sure enough, that's exactly what happened, just as Jesus said it would. And the Lord needs it, he said. And so they brought the colt to Jesus, and they put their garments on him. He got up on the donkey, and he began to ride into Jerusalem. There's no doubt. The Old Testament prophesied this, as Dane mentioned. It's in Zechariah 9:9. Look what it says. It says, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Zion is another word for Jerusalem. daughter Jerusalem, see, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. And so everybody who was there would have known this prophecy, and they would have known, okay, this is the message. This is what's happening right here. And so verse 37 says this. In Luke 19, it says, when he reached the place where the road started down the Mount of Olives, all of his followers began to shout and sing as they walked along, praising God for all the wonderful miracles they had seen. So I'm standing there 2 weeks ago today on the Mount of Olives, and I'm just overwhelmed with emotion, thinking about the number of times that Jesus had walked this same path before, the number of times that he had gone from Bethany, which is just over the hill here behind us on the Mount of Olives, and down in front is the Kidron Valley, and he and his disciples would walk and go back and forth on this road. And I was thinking, we're about to walk this same road. And I was overcome with emotion. I want us to read more of the story together. So would you stand as we read the rest of this little passage, beginning with verse 38. Here's what they said. They all claimed, blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, teacher, rebuke your disciples. I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, if you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Please be seated. I couldn't help but wonder on that cold morning 2 weeks ago, what was Jesus thinking on this particular day, the first Palm Sunday, when he began to descend from the Mount of Olives down to the Kidron Valley and back up to the Holy City? I wondered what he was thinking, and I had three thoughts. The first one is this: I'm confident that he was thinking about the fate of those who wouldn't believe in him. There's no question he was. I mean, that's why he wept, right? I mean, he's thinking about all of the people who are presently there, but he's also thinking about all the people who are to come in the world who will not believe that he is the Messiah. And it grieved him so much that he didn't just cry a little, whimper type cry. It says that he wept. Do you know the difference between crying and weeping? And for some reason, I mean, obviously he did it in a way that others, including the disciples, noticed, especially Luke. Luke found out about it and would later write about it. I mean, it was obvious to some of the people who were there, Jesus is weeping. And you would think, why in the world is he weeping? Well, as we were there and began to walk, I did a little bit of video, and then I found some other video that I put in with this little video I want you to see of this entry into Jerusalem. Watch this. So this is the church where they believe that on the Mount of Olives that Jesus would have wept over the city of Jerusalem on his way into the city of David on Palm Sunday. So we're standing on the Mount of Olives, walking down now towards the Kidron Valley. You can see how it descends and then comes back up. it looks so joyous there, doesn't it? I mean, the film of Jesus coming in on the donkey and the people are celebrating, but Jesus had been weeping. And this church was built later on, obviously, to mark the spot where Jesus is said to have wept. And that's just a significant moment, I think, here. There's only one other time where he wept. So what would make Jesus do that? I mean, another way to ask it is this way. Why is the King of Kings weeping on a day that should be filled with celebration, his triumphal entry? And it's so unexpected, I would think, for him to do that. I mean, he told us in verse 42, when we read it a minute ago, he said, if you, talking about all the people who are there and those who have yet to come, if you, even if you had only known on this day what would bring you peace. But now it's hidden from your eyes. It's hidden from your eyes. Seems pretty clear to me that Jesus is on this donkey looking over this city, and he's suffering from a broken heart already. I mean, I think his heart was broken over the reality that so many people would choose not to believe in him. I mean, if you've ever had someone, a situation where you thought somebody really loved you, but it turned out they didn't, you were brokenhearted, weren't you? If for some reason they wouldn't love you when you did all you could to love them. It breaks your heart. He wept because he knew what this would mean for them. You know, he said something similar in the temple. This wasn't the first time Jesus had been in. The disciples and others had been staying in Bethany just over the hill. They would go back and forth into the holy city. He had been there just a few days before, and he had been talking and teaching on the steps that lead into the temple. Into the holy city. We were on those teaching steps while we were there. And he said something about there are 7 woes set out against the Pharisees and the scribes. If you can read that, it's in Matthew 23. And then he says this in verse 37. He says, O Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones God's messengers, how often I have wanted to gather your children together as a hen protects her chicks beneath her wings, but you wouldn't let me. You wouldn't let me. And he's remembering Psalm 91, where we read these words about God. He will cover you with his feathers. He will shelter you with his wings. His faithful promises are your armor and your protection. How often I wish I could just gather you in, but you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't let me. I mean, you can sense Jesus' heart for the people. You can sense, I hope, you're sensing today Jesus' heart for you this morning. He feels the same way about us. And you got to ask the question, I mean, so why wouldn't the people believe? I mean, it's so obvious to us. We've read the stories. We know the Bible. And I think the answer we know, too, from what we understand of what happened there is that this was not the king they were expecting at all. I mean, they wanted somebody who was going to overthrow the Romans and restore Israel to its rightful place as a great nation. But Jesus wasn't that kind of a king. He never, ever promised to overthrow the Romans, did he? No. Instead, here's what he did. He promised that if you'll come to me, I'll lighten your load. He promised that if you'll come to me and drink of this living water, you will never be thirsty again. You will be satisfied deep within. He promised them peace. He promised them a future. He promised them, just as he promised us, I will never, ever leave you alone. Never. This King of Kings would promise victory for sure, but it's a different kind of victory, an unexpected victory. It's a victory over sin and death. It's a victory over guilt and shame. Yeah, there'll be victory, but it's going to cost me the shedding of blood. So I think he was thinking about the fact that there are so many who would not believe. And I think that's why he wept, and that was on his mind as he rode down from the Mount of Olives. But I also think he was thinking about this too. I think he was also rejoicing over those who would believe. Those of us in this room, those of us who've gone before us who did believe and do believe. He is the Messiah, the Son of God. He is the one who saves. I mean, that's why he came. That was his motivation for entering Jerusalem on this fateful day, Palm Sunday. Luke 19, Luke writes this, for the Son of Man came to seek and save those who were lost. This is something he taught the disciples right before he entered Jerusalem. Mark 10 says this, for even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others. That's a different kind of king, isn't it? And to give his life as a ransom for many. And somewhere Jesus says, blessed are you who have not seen, but yet believe. Blessed are you. He rejoices over us. In John 1, it says, to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. And that causes him to rejoice over you when you do that. So I think he's thinking about those who won't believe. I think he's thinking about those who will believe. But here's something else I just know had to be on his mind that day. He had to be thinking about what it's going to cost to finish the mission. To finish the mission. I don't have any real proof of that other than what I suspect happened there. I mean, he knew what was ahead of him before he came to that Mount of Olives that day. He knew it. In fact, he had been telling his disciples and others that this was going to happen. In Mark chapter 10, in verse 32, I like what it starts with. Look at this. This is another time Jesus was going into Jerusalem. Look what it says. They were now on the way up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was, here it is again, walking ahead of them. The disciples were filled with awe. I'm sure they were. And the people following them were filled with fear, not the kind of fear where you're scared of him, but the fear where you respect him. Taking the 12 disciples aside, look what it says. Jesus once more began to describe everything that was about to happen to him. And look what he describes. In verse 33, he says, listen. I love that he says that. Listen to me, guys. Let me tell you what's about to happen. We're going up to Jerusalem, where the Son of Man will be betrayed to the leading priest and the teachers of religious law, our people, our leaders. They will sentence him to death, to die, and hand him over to the Romans. And they, the Romans, they'll mock him. They're going to spit on him. They're going to flog him with a whip, and they're going to kill him. That's what's going to happen. But in 3 days, he's going to rise again. And you'll notice if you're using sermon notes, I put those blanks here. Here's why. I really wanted you to write it in there. I wanted you to write these words in there. Look at them. I wanted you to write the word betrayed. I wanted you to write sentenced to die and handed over to the Romans. I wanted you in your handwriting to write on there spit upon and flogged. And I wanted you to put in your handwriting that he would be killed, he would die. Why? All of that happened because of our sin, friends. All of it did. Your sin, my sin. Every bit of it happened because of us. And Jesus, almost as though it's an afterthought, he says, but on the third day he will rise again. And I'm sure the disciples are thinking, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand it. It's so unexpected. And while we were there on the Mount of Olives, we saw something that stood out. They pulled us aside and they began to show us a particular tree there. It's called an acacia tree. I don't know if you know what an acacia tree is. I didn't. This is the tree that they say the Romans used. They clipped pieces of it, and they used it to form the crown of thorns that they would press upon his head. And so we took some pictures. Rich took some pictures. A little bit hard to see this first one. I don't know if you can see those thorns. They're about 3 inches long or so. And they are as hard as bone. There's a little bit better picture of it. You can see it with the holy city in the background. I really like the next picture. That's really pretty cool to think about. But they clipped off some little pieces to let us hold them and touch the thorns. And they said, hey, listen, you can take a piece of this home with you and you can mount it or do something like that. And so they gave us some pieces. And Rich thought we could bring a piece back. So he happened to have a backpack at the time. I didn't have one. So we took this piece about like that one in the picture and we put it in his backpack. And almost immediately when he put his backpack on, he said, ouch, because these thorns were already sticking through the backpack, through his shirt, jacket, all the way to his skin. And it wasn't very long after that, after about 30 or 40 ouches, he finally said, I got to get this thing out of here. And that's just in just a short period of time of just having one or two of those thorns sticking in his back. And I thought, that's what they pressed into Jesus's forehead, on his head. And I wonder when Jesus is riding or walking by this acacia tree, I wonder if he thought this. He thought, they're going to use the very tree that I created to cause me even more pain. I wonder if he thought that. But yet he rode into Jerusalem anyway. He rode into Jerusalem anyway. So what's he thinking? Here's what I really believe. I think that when Jesus traveled the Palm Sunday road, here's what I think, friends. I think he was thinking about you and me. I think he had us on his mind too. He was thinking about you. And I think he was saying, knowing what was in front of him, he was saying this, I'll do this for you. In the garden, a little bit later, when he was praying, and he asked that the cup be lifted, I think he said this, I really would like this cup lifted, but I'll do this for you. I think when they mocked him and spit on him and beat him almost to death, I think he was thinking, I don't want to do this except for you. And when they drove those nails through his hand and through his feet, he did it for you. I'll do it for you. You and I, we were on his mind. You know, it's interesting, when we know something painful is coming up, you ever have a child who not excited to go to a doctor or a dentist, and they'll do everything, they will bargain, they will sell their soul if they could to not have to go to that doctor or that dentist. I mean, we'll do everything we can to avoid the pain, but not Jesus. I'll do it. Don't really want to, but I'll do it for you. For you. And I love the idea that he's out front doing it. That's our King. That's the King that we have. And so here's the question. Here's the question. Will Jesus weep over us, or will he rejoice over us? That's the question for you today and for me. Will we believe or will we not believe today? And the way we believe, friends, is not just intellectually. It's we believe in the depth of our being. He is the Messiah. He's the King. And I've committed my life to him because of it. That's the way we respond to him. And he'll walk with us every day of our lives. So is he your King? Well, I want you to ponder that this week, and I hope you'll come on Monday night and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday night especially, because I'll share with you that other favorite place that we went to the last day when we were in the Holy Land. You're going to want to be here for that. And we'll pray with Jesus and we'll spend time with him. But here's some next steps for you to think about this week. The first is this: who am I in this Palm Sunday story? Am I the one that he's going to rejoice over, or am I the one he's going to weep over? And then the second one is, well, what do I need to do, Jimmy? Maybe I don't understand it completely. What is it I need to do to be a true believer? I want to make sure I'm a true believer, not just an intellectual believer. Listen, if you have questions about that, see me, see Jamie, Rich, Stan, any of our pastors on staff, Wesley, anybody. See our staff and we'll help you. The third one is, how do I respond to what Jesus did to save me? And then the last one is the most important one. Maybe today for you, for the first time, you say, okay, I believe it. I really believe it. I want to commit my life to Christ today. And when you do, he'll rejoice over you. He will.